What is going on, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be taking a look at the PC performance for Strange Brigade on a pair of mid-range graphics cards with the AMD RX 580 and the GTX 1060. This game just came out this week from Rebellion, who you might know from the Sniper Elite franchise and also the Zombie Army Trilogy games, which they've done to kind of accompany those as standalone. It's kind of like a standalone DLC almost for the Sniper Elite series, but this is a completely separate thing, although you will probably notice a lot of similarities, particularly with the Zombie Army Trilogy. It's kind of like that, except now instead of fighting against Nazi zombies, you're fighting against mummies and skeletons and things along those lines. Not very spoopy skeletons, just normal skeletons. So yeah, it's a fun little co-op game. You can play it by yourself, you can play solo, or you can play with a group of up to 3 friends, so 4 people total for online co-op. You can also do a horde mode, but there is an actual campaign mode, which I'm told is about maybe 5 to 7 hours if you play it up with a group of friends. There's lots of puzzles and yeah, boss fights and things like that. And so far, it's a pretty decent little game. It is retailing over on Steam right now for $50. However, if you do want to pick it up a little bit cheaper, the cheapest place I was able to find it was on cdkeys.com. I will have an affiliate link to them down in the description below. It's $38.29 over there right now, and it is a global key, so it'll work anywhere, and it also includes some initial DLC along with it, some pre-order DLCs that was available for the game initially on Steam. But obviously, if you pick it up over on Steam for $50, you're paying a little bit more, but at least then you can get a full refund in case you don't like the game or you have any performance issues, which hopefully we can kind of put to rest here in this video. So, kind of go the route that you feel is best for you. Pay the $50 on Steam. Then you can get a refund, but on CD Keys, if you know you're going to play with friends, you could save yourself about $12 by picking it up over there. Now, as I said, I was testing on the RX 580 and the GTX 1060. Both of those were running on the latest drivers, which are optimized for Strange Brigade. So for NVIDIA, that's 399.07, and for AMD, it was 18.8.2. And I was also testing inside of my FrameRaider build along with an i7 7700K, which I have overclocked to 4.9 gigahertz and 16 gigabytes of system memory running at 3000 megahertz. Now, before we get into the actual frame performance number, I do want to go into the graphics options, which is actually a splash screen. When you first start up the game within Steam, it opens up this splash screen right here, and you'll notice that there's actually 2 different API versions you can play, and neither of them are DirectX 11. You can play it in either Vulkan or on DirectX 12. Now, I actually did all of my testing on DirectX 12, and the reason that I did that is because when I was trying to utilize Vulkan on the RX 580, it would crash in the game benchmark every single time at the same exact spot, so it just made it impossible for me to actually run through the benchmark on the RX 580, although the performance was kind of negligible between the two. I'm going to show you a benchmark run right now here on the GTX 1060 with the Vulkan API versus the DirectX 12 API. This is running at 1080p, ultra settings with motion blur turned off, which is the same settings I used for all my testing. And you'll see it's running pretty much the same, kind of within the margin of error. At the end of this run, the average FPS for Vulkan was 68 FPS, while on DirectX 12, the 1060 got 70 FPS. Again, that's at 1080p ultra settings. So there was only a 2 FPS difference in the average between Vulkan and DirectX 12 when testing on the GTX 1060. But as I said, I had issues on the RX 580 testing with Vulkan, so that's why I used DX12 for all the other testing. Getting back into the other graphics options here, we can see that very similar screen, just like on the Sniper Elite games of recent years. You get a pop-up here and you can switch between full screen, windowed, or borderless. You can change your resolution. You can see right now I'm on an ultra-wide monitor, but I have it in 16:9. And then you could do presets for low, medium, high, and ultra. As I said, everything in here was running on the ultra preset, except for motion blur. I did toggle that off. There's also an ambient occlusion toggle, tessellation, and obscurance fields. And of course, you can change things like VSync, brightness, audio quality. And there's actually one more option in the game menus if you go into display settings, which is not in this initial splash screen, and that is for async compute. And I did test with async compute enabled on both the RX 580 and the GTX 1060. But without further ado, let's get into the performance testing and take a look at the numbers. You'll be seeing some side-by-side comparisons on your screen right now with the 580 and the 1060 running at 1080p, and then I'm also going to show 1440p as well. Both of these cards can handle these resolutions pretty well, although the RX 580 definitely did a fair bit better when it came to running Strange Brigade. The game is just better optimized for the RX 580 and Polaris, very likely because it's taking advantage of DirectX 12 and Vulkan APIs if you can get Vulkan to work without crashing on the 580, which is kind of unfortunate. I would have really liked to have used the Vulkan API because it usually runs really great in the games that use it correctly. But DirectX 12 still ran really well on the RX 580, actually better than the 1060 by, I would say, a significant margin, to the point where at 1440p, the game was very playable on an RX 580. All the gameplay you were seeing at the beginning of this video and that you'll see at the end was running on the RX 580 at 1440p ultra settings, and it was running at a smooth 60 frames per second, but the GTX 1060 struggled to even run at 1080p at a smooth 60 frames per second. It could basically just do it at 1080p, while the RX 580 can, do it in spades and have a little bit of headroom to spare, although there were some drops down below 60 here and there. The 1060, I would say 1440p is probably not going to be a super enjoyable experience, at least in ultra settings. You might need to drop down things to like medium and high to get a smooth 60, and then you should be okay. But at ultra, the RX 580 is just running the game a lot better right here. So we'll go into the graph now. We'll take a look at this here with the average FPS, and then I will also show you the 1% lows. As I said, RX 580 running the game quite a bit better at 1080p, getting an average of 82 FPS, while the GTX 1060 got an average of 71 FPS, and at 1440p, the RX 580 did get an average of 60, while the 1060 came all the way down to 48 FPS. So we're looking at roughly a 10 FPS difference between these two cards based on the different resolutions here. So that's definitely nothing to sneeze at. We're not talking about margin of error. 10 FPS is a decent amount. It's enough to make the game run very smooth at 60 frames per second, even at 1440p, while the 1060 is going to just struggle quite a bit. We'll go into the 1% lows here, where you can see the 1060 had 1% lows down below 60 in both resolutions, even 1080p. It struggled to maintain that 60, got a 1% low of 56, while at 1440p it got a very low 1% low of 38, and the RX 580 ended up getting a 1% low of 63 at 1080p, while 1440p it was 49, so there was some FPS drops, but for the most part, when I was actually playing the game, it was very smooth for me at 1440p on the RX 580, and I did not have an issue running it at that resolution and enjoying the game. I didn't notice any massive frame drops or anything like that, and it is a decent looking game. It's not like the most amazing graphics ever. It's not going to really blow you away, but it does look pretty good. If you're, like I said at the beginning, if you're familiar with the Sniper Elite series, it's, looks very similar to that, and a lot of the animations and things and some of the menu systems have kind of carried over from that series. It's kind of almost like it's like a side project for the Rebellion team working on this game here, just like they did with the Zombie Trilogy, which I enjoyed all of those games. I enjoyed the Sniper Elite, I enjoyed the Zombie Trilogy, and so far I have enjoyed what I've played of this by myself, although I am going to be playing with a friend later on today, so I am definitely looking forward to that. But I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, guys. I hope you enjoyed this performance analysis with the RX 580 and the 1060 on Strange Brigade. Once again, if you do want to pick it up over at CD Keys with my affiliate link, I'll have that down in the description below so you can go ahead and check it out for yourself. But I'm going to get out of here, and I will see you all tomorrow for another video. Ta-ra.